This week on QDL, we talked to Chad Kymal, president of Omnex, about changes to the AIAG FMEA document that has been used in industry since the 1960s. And what does that mean for automakers and suppliers? Find out in 30 seconds. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, editor-in-chief of Quality Digest. Well, the AIAG-VDA has updated the AIAG FMEA document that has been used since the 1960s. And there are two popular formats of FMEA, the one used by AIAG, the Automotive Industry Action Group, and in Germany, the one used by VDA. And I won't try to pronounce the German. But recently, to standardize the two different FMEA methods, a team worked on harmonizing both methods into a single handbook. And the result is the newly released AIAG-VDA FMEA. And here to talk about that change is Chad Kymal, president of Omnex. Hi, Chad. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dirk. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. So first of all, how did this change come about? Why did this change come about?
So simply said, Dirk, the automotive suppliers and OEMs are global. And, large tier ones and OEMs found themselves with two completely different formats in Europe versus the US. And with these two different formats, it meant a lot of extra work. It's not just the extra work, it's two different teams that couldn't talk to each other, engineering teams that couldn't talk to each other, manufacturing teams that couldn't talk to each other. So the industry flagged it as a key, harmonization effort they wanted to see happen. So out of that, we saw as you mentioned, a team from Germany and a team from US worked together to come up with this harmonized document. It took us a long time. It took us a couple of years. And finally, June 3rd, just 7 days ago, we saw the emergence of a harmonized AIAG-VDA FMEA document.
Okay, and so it sounds like what you're saying is that the main reason is there was kind of a disconnect between how FMEAs were done in the German auto industry and how they were done in the U.S. auto industry, and those need to be harmonized so that everybody was kind of speaking the same language. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Even more than the same language, it is really the whole idea is about risk prevention, and then also coming up with good test plans on the design side and good manufacturing controls on the manufacturing side. So it's just much more than a document. It's really what we were trying to do in design and what we were trying to do in manufacturing that had to harmonize. And so it's a big deal. Okay.
Now I know there were some detractors about doing this, particularly bringing in some of the VDA ideas. And I think this all kind of centered around the core tools. There were some issues around some of the core tools and core tool software and that sort of stuff. And there were some detractors about this new document. What were some of their concerns? Do you know what they were concerned about and how you would address them?
So a couple of things. I'll just announce, I think it's a good change. It is a change that's going in the right direction. I'm sure we'll talk about benefits later, and we'll talk about the benefits and it'll become clear why the automotive industry had to do it. But I think, you guys ran an article a while back from one of the detractors was talking about the methodology being wrong. There's nothing wrong with the methodology. The methodology is very sound. Let's look at the key difference. The key difference, I'll talk about the DFMEA and the PFMEA. And the DFMEA, well, both of them have what is called a focus element, a higher element, and a lower element. It makes the most sense in the design FMEA. The higher element is the system, and let's say we're focusing on a subsystem, and then the lower element is the components of the subsystem. So there's this idea of three different layers of the product. And so that's one of the key differences, is that when you're looking at failure modes, you're looking at failure modes on what is called the focus element, the effect on the higher element, and the cause on the lower element. So that is a key change, and that complexity that it brings in, and also with the size of the form has really increased by, I don't know how many percentages. The form is very big. And third, the relationship is three-dimensional now from two-dimensional. All of these, I'm sure, are viewed as by some people as sort of negatives, making the FMEA harder to do. And that's really why you need to really have software to get this done. And that's why companies like Omnex Systems, which I'm also founder and CEO of, have an AIAG-VDA FMEA software to help make this easier.
Well, and if I remember right, one of the concerns in that article, and I don't want to throw a curve at you if you're not familiar with this, but I think one of the concerns was that what got implemented into the AIAG-VDA handbook was to kind of align it with the software that was developed by the Germans, I think, unless I'm wrong here, by Volkswagen, and that there was kind of the sense that methodology was being pushed onto U.S. automakers. Does that kind of resonate with you at all, or?
So that has been a big concern by a number of people who have talked about it, and it may or may not be true.
Okay.
But there is one very popular software, and it appeared to people viewing this that things were getting sort of gone, in that direction. But I have to say, with where the automotive industry is going, and I'll just have to bring in, we're going with functional. So what's happening in the automotive industry, of course, is a major product shift. We're going from mechanical gas and diesel vehicles into electric vehicles and autonomous cars. With this big change, a number of new standards are coming in. ISO 26262, which is for just safety. But as I mentioned before in several webinars of people have been watching me, everything is a safety product as soon as you get into autonomous car or e-car. And really, cybersecurity, functional safety, and SOTF, it's a safety of the intended function. Soon as you look at that and understand it works in what is called a V. It's called a system V, hardware V, and software V. So it's requirements flowing down and testing going up. Soon as you have something like that with requirements flowing down, you need a FMEA that links the system to the subsystem, to the sub-subsystem, to the components.
Right.
This is how the vehicles are very complex, and you need to have that. So I'm giving you sort of a little bit about what are the great benefits. So in the automotive industry, we had to move this way because other standards are moving this way, and you needed a really good vehicle to connect up the functions and requirements and the failures to testing. So I'll talk more about this if people want to check. I'm doing a webinar on this actually next week for Omnex, and actually I'm not doing it. 3 of the authors are doing this, and we'll actually be doing this. Maybe when are you guys airing this?
Well, I think I believe your webinar. Actually, let's just check this out here. I believe your webinar is the week after next, and I'll just look at our calendar here, and I'll give everybody kind of a heads up. And just one second. Okay, your webinar that you're talking about is on June 25th. And this video that we're watching right now is one about a week before, so running on June 19th. So your webinar on this topic is June 25th. So coming up pretty soon.
So I'm also doing another webinar. I said next week, so that's good. I'm also doing another webinar this Thursday. So I would guess it's on the 13th, is it?
Yep.
And I don't know if this will air before then, but we do tape our webinars. That actually, Dirk, is going to be presented by one of the writers of the AIAG-VDA FMEA and 2 of the writers of the AIAG 4th edition.
Okay.
And we're going to have nice discussions in terms of methodology and benefits and things like that.
Okay.
So I'll just say one very quick thing before we go to the next question. In terms of detractors, the other concern we all had was on the AIAG-VDA FMEA that the standard did not insist on a process flow diagram, but insisted on something called a structure analysis, which we don't think is as useful. So those are some of the concerns. And I'm going to be we're doing actually 4 different webinars, and I am actually doing another webinar on problems and issues. And, we welcome people to join that. That'll be after the Quality Digest webinar.
Right, the structural, I remember that now. The structural analysis, that was kind of the other big, yeah, you're right, that's kind of was the other big bugaboo that people were a little concerned about.
All of which is really, really needed, because this is the way the automotive industry is going. And these are the changes companies need to make when they are moving forward to the electric car, an autonomous car. Dirk, it's a given. Yeah. Our product has shifted. GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Volvo, you name the car company, Audi, everybody's announced that's the way they're going.
Yeah.
So tier 1 suppliers, all of us have to accept this change and have to accept this AIAG-VDA FMEA change. Embrace the change, folks. And on top of that, many structural things have to change in the company, because that's just the way the industry is going. Go ahead,
I know this is probably a little self-serving, but I think it's true, is all this complexity that you're talking about really is driving tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 vendors into really having to embrace software of some sort, whether it's Omnex or somebody else, because it's getting too complex to do everything you're talking about on a spreadsheet anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, you cannot quite do this in a spreadsheet. You can do it on very simple parts, but you cannot do it on a spreadsheet for anything really complicated. This is what our experts are telling us.
Yeah.
Software is one of the changes you have to embrace, and we have wonderful software.
there you go.
AIAG edition that will go a long way. Sorry, Dirk.
So, what are you kind of touched on a couple of them, but what do you think is one of the key changes in this document from the old one that you think might have the most impact on suppliers?
So many key changes. So I would say that there's a 7-step, it's German.
You've got to have steps.
So there are 7 steps for the AIAG-VDA FMEA, and they followed, if you ask me, they forced it a little bit on the process side. But so we have 7 steps on the same 7 steps on the process side, okay? So that's one. Second is the idea of levels, and I already mentioned that.
Right.
That when you're doing the, the DFMEA, you have so you have to get used to this idea of what is called the focus element. That's the part you're focused on. The higher element, which is your customer, and your lower element, that could be an inside supplier of your own company or an external supplier. So that's how the effect and the cause is rolled out with the failure mode being in the middle in your product.
Okay.
And we're going to discuss some issues regarding that. Omnex sees things, we accept that, but we want to make an amendment to that to make the FMEA more effective. So we're trying to look at this in a positive way. We're not 100% behind everything, but what we're not in favor of, we just have fixed it in terms of how we describe how the methodology should be.
Okay.
So,
and I guess last question before we go here is, what are, I don't know, one or two, what you think are the most key benefits that are coming out of this?
I'll give you a couple, and I'm putting some of this thought down on paper, so you're getting something before I fully, when you write it down, you get your brain all organized. But I'll just say this. It's not that we didn't have that with the AIAG 4th edition, but the idea of what is called design reuse and process reuse, which means you're going to have an architecture of your product portfolio, and you create family FMEAs, and that all the lessons learned in the automotive industry, we think about all the failure history of warranty, customer rejects, internal rejects, get fed back into a FMEA that houses all the lessons learned. And then it's actually through software, you inherit this knowledge into the new FMEA, which is called design reuse, so that you're not starting from scratch, you save a lot of time, and you start where the last product ended rather than going through another learning curve. So that is being really emphasized in the new manual. So I would say Omnex is embracing that. We think is a great change. Folks, the PPM reduction, we in the US did a great job with that with the old AIAG 4th edition. That's not where the savings are, it's in reuse. Okay? Number two, as I mentioned to you, soon as you look at the failure modes being of functions and then requirements. And in the PFMEA, failure modes are failures of characteristics. And then what's going to happen is it's really going to aid you in this V of system flowing down, and then hardware and software requirements picking up, and they also being in a V. You can't get that, you can't get your DVPNR matching unless you use something like AIAG-VDA FMEA. You will not be able to get your test plan to match the requirements you identified. I hope, it's a big idea, it's an important idea, but let me just leave you with that germ of a thought. A gem of a thought.
It is a gem of a thought.
That the failures have to be of functions and requirements, and then of characteristics to really get the V. And that's one of the other big reasons you need to go to the AIAG-VDA FMEA.
Okay. And Chad, we should point out, as we mentioned earlier, you do have a webinar coming up on all this. It's called Relearning the FMEA, AIAG-VDA FMEA. And that is June 25th. So that's about a week and a half, next week from when this show this show airs. As you all can tell, Chad is really steeped in this. He really knows what he's talking about. His webinars are always completely packed full of information. So if you are within the auto industry, you're an auto industry supplier, you definitely want to go to this webinar, because this is something that is coming down the pike. It's already here. The new handbook is out, so you really need to familiarize yourself with what is being expected from the AIAG-VDA FMEA, so you can make sure that you're in alignment and understand what it is you need to do. Chad, once again, thanks for. Oh, go ahead.
Make one comment. It's not just for the automotive industry, because Omnex does a lot of work in aerospace and medical devices. And the aerospace industry, they already have this concept of flow down, and you saw with the Boeing issue how important safety is going to be. So the AIAG-VDA FMEA is a good opportunity for medical devices who cares a lot about safety, and also for the aerospace. I think it's worth taking a good look at. And thank you very much, Dirk.
Okay. Chad Kymal, thanks a lot, President of Omnex. That is all the time we have for today, folks. And as usual, if there is someone or something or some topic you'd like to see on the show, just send us those ideas to qdl@qualitydigest.com. There is a link to the webinar that we just talked about here of relearning the FMEA, AIAG-VDA FMEA. Right underneath the player page there, if you click that'll take you out to the registration page, and you can sign up for this very important webinar. You don't want to miss that. So thanks for joining us today. We will see you all next week on QDL. So long.